What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Powered by Primus, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the Energon Invitational. We're going to be talking about the event, everything that went down kind of at the event, what we did play, at least some of the decks that we did play, as well as my thoughts on the events, and even talking about highlights. So this is going to be a really awesome video breaking down all of that stuff. Now I'm going to be doing a separate video after this, which is going to be talking about a little more of coverage from the event. I'm going to be talking about top 8, I'll be talking about matchups, and all that good jazz. In addition to that, I'll also be doing deck profile videos on the deck that I did play and a deck that some of the other team members did play, so you guys will see those in separate videos where I do get to break down a lot of that. I will be telling you guys kind of what we did run in this video, but obviously I'm not going to be going into detail into that because that's what we're going to be doing the deck profile video on. So it's going to be a really awesome video, so strap in and let's jump into the video. Alrighty, so talking about the video, I'm going to kind of be bouncing back and forth between some things. I'm going to try to keep it on a straight road, but I definitely may take a couple of turns here and there just because of conversations or whatever else may be going on. So ultimately, to talk about the event, with my initial thought is I thought the Energon Invitational was awesome. I really did enjoy it. I really did just the event as a whole and everything that did come with the event. So if you are just looking for my initial thoughts about it, I loved the event. I can't wait for there to be more like it, and I can't wait for, I would say, if and when next year's Energon Invitational will be coming around, because I would imagine that there will definitely be one again next year. We'll probably cap off each season or each section of tournaments after qualifiers for this big tournament, probably as an annual thing once a year. I absolutely loved it. I definitely would promote more of these in the future. Now, I will be showing pictures and a couple of little videos throughout this video from the event, so just that way you guys can kind of see some of the things that did go on. I was really sad that I couldn't get more video time, but it's just because, like, between going places, meeting people, play testing, participating, commentating, a bunch of other things that did go down, I wasn't really able to get a whole lot of video footage from the event. I definitely think that next year or the next big event that I go to, I'll probably hire a videographer, someone who can kind of help me with some of that, because I was so focused on some of these things, or helping people or talking to people, meeting people. It was really hard to try to pull out a camera and do stuff too. So like I said, I'll probably hire someone next time for that, so we can do a lot more vlogging while we're there, because it was a lot of fun and there's a lot of things that I wish I could have shared with you guys. It's just going to be kind of hard for me to be able to hold a camera while also trying to do some of that other stuff. So I definitely don't have a lot of videos for you guys, but like I said, I do have some pictures, so I'll be able to kind of make it up through some of that. So first off, talking about the event getting out there, we did Airbnb. There was 7 of us in there. There were 6 Colorado guys who did stay with us, 2 that did not stay with us that did attend the event, and then we did bunk up with Def TF, Stefan Pickney. It was really awesome having him there, so we get to do a little bit of collaborating, a little bit of talking, some play testing the night before as well. And if you guys did follow any of the coverage, he did make top 8, so it was really awesome for that as well. Now, I will talk about at least what I ran first and what the team kind of ran, just because I may talk about it throughout the video so you guys aren't confused. I did run Shockwave at the event. It was a really fun, really good deck, in my opinion, that did mainboard more towards the orange battle icon matchups, and I did sideboard into the blue matchups. So really interesting stuff. I will, like I said, go into a very detailed breakdown with that in the next video talking about coverage, although I will talk about my matches in this video. And then the team did, the other members of the team, we had 1 person on Cars who hit top 16. We had 3 on Octone, 1 who I believe just barely missed top 32, and then 2 that didn't get the greatest of seal pools, so they didn't quite make it far in that, but their constructed matches went really well. Like I said, you guys will see that deck profile video. We had 1 on Metroplex who did really awesome, so really cool with that. And then trying to think, I do believe, and then we had 1 on Blaster as well. So really good stuff, kind of diverse, which is one thing that you really saw a lot of in the tournament. Again, I'll talk about that in the meta breakdown coverage video next time. But it was really awesome stuff. So we did build for those. The constructed matches were really awesome and kind of all over the place. But as far as going to the event goes, it was really awesome. The flight out there was fantastic. Got to Airbnb with the group. It was really nice. Airbnb was a nice place. It was down there in South Philly, which, by the way, the roads out there were, that was mind-blowing all by itself. It definitely got claustrophobic even sitting in the passenger seat driving down some of those streets, which was really crazy. But the event was held at PAX. It was a really cool event, the convention center down there. The area was really awesome. We got to head over to Reading Terminal, which By the way, if you're in that area, it's definitely called Reading, but it's spelled Reading. We had some really good debates back and forth about that. Place was really awesome. You go in there and they have restaurants in this terminal like you can't believe, and you literally could get anything you want in this area, from candy to donuts to breakfast to duck to ramen. Like, it was all over the board. Philly cheesesteak. So it was a really, really cool thing. We had to go over there and get breakfast that first day, which would have been on Friday. Now, that was also the same day that the LCQs were being handled. That was the last chance qualifier for you to qualify for Saturday. They did have a tournament every hour where it was single round elimination. I do believe you had to go 4-0, which did allow you to qualify for Saturday. Now, talking about this, a lot of people were kind of curious as to why I wasn't jumping into those and why I wasn't playing in those. And to be honest, it's because they were single elimination. Even if you were qualified, it did pass down to the second place person, but because they were single elimination, if I played in round 1 and I managed to beat my opponent, it wasn't really much of a practice thing for me, as I was removing someone who was trying to get into the Energon Invitational. I was essentially removing their chances from it. After I would have beaten them, they would have had to jump into the next tournament, spend another $30, and then hope that they can make it that way. And I didn't want to be that person who was kind of knocking people out when I was already qualified, so I made sure I stayed out of that. Although I will say the highlight of out of all of the LCQs walking around was I did watch a Triptychon take down a Shockwave. So if you are watching this video, congratulations. That was an awesome, awesome game that I did get to watch. Now I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more about these LCQs, the last chance qualifiers, a little more in depth, because I think it's a very specific thing and I don't want it to come off the wrong way, so I will try to dive as deep as I can into it, as detailed as I can. But I don't think the last chance qualifiers should have been at the event. Now, I will go in depth, so I said don't just start freaking out. I do understand that there were people who were trying to get that last chance qualifier to try to get in. However, I saw a lot of people playing who are already qualified, and they were trying to get that live fire practice, and I can understand and I can get behind the thought of it. However, knocking people out of the tournament again, so they had to try to jump into a later one, I don't think is very fair. I know you can always kind of backpedal to, well, if they're not beating me, they don't deserve to be in the event. I did hear a lot of that going back and forth with it, but I also heard on the same fact that people were getting knocked out by those who were already qualified, and it kind of wasn't fair to them. So it was this really kind of awkward back and forth between the two. However, at the end of the day, it was 4 or 5 people who were able to get in via the last chance qualifiers. Now, the reason why I say that I don't think that they should have been at the event was because of the amount of time that it took for that to go down. Now, I do understand that the day was planned, or the trip was planned for Saturday to be the big event, and then Sunday to cut to a top 8 and kind of finish everything out on top 8. However, I'll talk about how long Saturday was here in just a second, but we got in 4 to 5 people through the last chance qualifier. Now, I can understand that if you're in your area, you didn't have any qualifiers, so it was hard for you to get there to qualify. However, a lot of the people that I talked to there didn't have that as their situation. They just happened to not win at their locals, so this was their chance of trying to get in at the event, which I understand and I respect. However, there was only 4 or 5 people that were trying to get in, or who did get in through that event, so a lot of resources were kind of spent on the last chance qualifiers. Anyone who was already qualified, I don't think should have had the opportunity to jump into those events. There was plenty of gaming going around that area. You could easily jumped into a match with anyone that was playing around in that area and left the door open for the last chance qualifier players to have a better chance. So that is definitely one thing that could be improved probably in the future. The other thing is that if that isn't the option for people to, stop certain players from getting into it, I think it should go back to Swiss rounds. I understand that for time reasons, it was just easier to, okay, run this for 4 rounds. Whoever wins goes undefeated, gets in. You don't have to worry about trying to do round robin and try to have your cuts. However, when you're just knocking people out when you're already qualified, it just makes it kind of unfortunate. And for someone to pay for a plane ticket, pay for a hotel, fly out there to lose first round to someone who's already qualified seems really, really bad. So wasn't a big fan of that. So you're going to always have kind of that controversy there with that in general. But with how long Saturday's event was, I think a really easy thing to have done was to break it up and to have Friday do part of the event, Saturday finish the event, and then we could have even possibly done top 8 at the end of that day, or still leave top 8 for Sunday and not mess with it. The hall was already being paid for. Those 3 days were already designated to the Transformers TCG for that space, so we could have easily have broken it up that way. Now, I do understand that the way traveling works as well, they wanted to make sure that they started on a Saturday so people could, fly in Saturday or fly in Friday night and get ready for the event. But you have this really awkward trying to make some people happy and trying to make some people happy, and sometimes you just have to make the bigger group happier. Now, I do want to say congratulations to anyone who did get in on the last chance qualifiers. I do think that that is a really cool idea. However, like I said, just trying to use that space for it that day just made it seem kind of awkward. The benefit to it, though, was that people who were already qualified got to get there a day early if they wanted to, check out the area, meet people, shake some hands, put faces to names, which is really, really awesome. It was by far one of my favorite things about the weekend. It's always one of my favorite things about these events, is really meeting the people that I talk to online, help build decks online, a couple people that I help qualify online. Getting to meet those people is really, really awesome. Always seeing old friends, and then hanging out with other content creators and stuff like that is always really, really awesome, and was by far one of the best things about Friday just in general. Now, Friday night, we did have a really cool hangout. I'll be showing you guys a picture of that. We did get to go meet up with some people, have a lot of fun, get to just kind of swap some stories back and forth and just have a really good night. And then getting into, we did do some playtesting Friday night, which ended up being pretty relevant. Messing around with a couple of the decks, making a few swaps, helping a few people better play against Shockwave, and then me lose later on, which we'll talk about here in just a second, is really good too. But it was a really good night, getting ready for the big event, getting everything ready snack-wise, going to bed early, doing all that good jazz that you should always be doing, and then waking up and heading to the event Saturday. Now, I'm going to be skimming over some things. The event as a whole, I thought went really, really well, and I will say was leaps and bounds better than what I saw at Gen Con and heard about at Origins. There were definitely some hiccups, don't get me wrong. However, there was a lot of things that kind of went on behind the scenes that a lot of people didn't understand, so I'm going to try to break down some of those things a little bit better for people, to maybe try to bring down some of the negativity and maybe open up people's eyes and ears a little bit to understanding certain situations. Now, the first thing that kind of happened was that they were light staffed. They did, I think it was like, we heard that there were 3 to 5 people who ended up not being able to make it to the event. So their judges were a little lighter, their staff was a little lighter, whether it was behind the scenes, they were the ones that were doing the pairings, because it is ran by Pastimes, and they're also trying to do some Magic stuff as well. So they were stretched very thin, and for that, I can understand that things go wrong. But I do think that those were there, John Temple and some of the other people, I think they actually did a really good job for the amount of people that they did have. I definitely felt like there wasn't many times where people had pairing issues. There weren't many times where people just didn't have opponents, and then there was some other people who had buys. They did a pretty good job of making sure that they were asking, who doesn't have an opponent? Great. 4 people don't have opponents, put those 4 people together. Oh, can you guys hear us over here trying to break up audio? They did a really good job of trying to do their best with what they had, and for that, I want to give a big shout out to them. I think they did a really good job as far as some of those things go. Now, the one thing that ended up, I think, taking people not by surprise, but finally realizing how much we knew it was going to go down, was the time. They did change the end of game rules about a week and a half ago, as far as how the match ends, and this was a very big controversial thing throughout the weekend. I will say I personally had to take a match loss to it, but given the situation and the circumstance, as much as I hated it, I did understand the call, so I will probably go into that a little bit more. But they did change the end of rules, and I think the average time per round ended up being about 75 minutes. So normally your rounds are supposed to be 50 minutes. So when you're looking at an event we knew was supposed to be 9 rounds, you times that by 50 minutes, you're looking roughly 9, probably 10 hours, because 10 minutes in between rounds, give it about 60 minutes. Well, each round ended up going to averaging out to about 75 minutes. Well, 75 minutes times 9 becomes a little longer. And then there were times that we had a little bit of start issues, some things like that. So it ended up being a really long day. Now I'll tell you, I come from a Magic background, traveling and playing in really high events, so I understood this time frame. I was very used to this time frame. It's just making sure you get that sleep, making sure you have snacks. If someone ends up having to drop, they make sure that they go run and get the food, they bring the drinks over. You just try to communicate as best as possible. Now, I understand that this is based on, we also had a team there. We had people who could do that for us. However, someone who is there by themselves, it was really hard to try and take a bathroom break. It was really hard to try to go get food. It was difficult. Now, I think part of this is that there just wasn't a whole lot of expectations going into it for some of those people. No one really knew that it was going to happen like that, so it was harder for them to plan and deal with it in those situations. Now, I do think that if we would have broken it up and done the first half of the tournament on Friday with no LCQs, I think it would have made things run a lot smoother. We could have, if we did do the 9 rounds, 10 rounds, however they wanted to do it, we could have easily have broken it up, maybe done 6 rounds, 7 rounds day 1. It would have been a little bit longer, or maybe probably 6 rounds would probably have been best. And then we can go into day 2, finish out those rounds, and then we can go into top 8 later on that day. So there could be a break in between. Would have probably been really nice to do, or even just do half rounds day 1, half rounds day 2, and then top 8 could have went down on the last and final day. The other thing about that is those who didn't do well on day 1 could always drop if they wish, and then they can go explore the event day 2, kind of do some of those other things. But honestly, I thought the way that it was done was pretty fair. I know that it is very difficult to sit down and play a card game for 10 to 12 hours, to try to stay mentally focused, to try to not make those play mistakes is a very difficult thing, and for that I do understand. Now, some of the things that are talked about when it comes to this is this game is designed for 8 and older to be playing the game, and it's really hard to expect an 8-year-old to sit there and play for 12 hours straight. Now, whereas I do agree with you on that statement, I will say that we don't have very many of those in this actual game. And I will admit, I did see a few kids that were definitely playing, and they were going like champions. They were trying so hard. They were playing pretty later into the rounds, and for that, big shout out to them. They are going to be the future of our gaming, so we obviously want to make sure that they do have fun and that they do experience these things in a really nice way, because we want them to continue and further to play. If they hate it, then they're going to not want to play anymore, and then it's just going to be kind of us playing and then not having the next generation, and we always want to make sure that we keep pushing this. Now, that is also one of the reasons why it was at PAX. I will talk about that here in just a second, but the event, as far as that for kids to be playing, the majority of people who are playing were older and could sit there and play for the 12 hours in the day. The other part about it is that some people are new to the card game. Transformers has brought a lot of people who have never played card games, or brought people back to playing card games, and they've never played in these very large events. So it was an eye-opener to see how many people were there, and an eye-opener to play for that long. And that, again, I just think comes down to expectations. I don't think expectations were fully set on what to experience at this event. Now, part of that also might be my fault for not doing a video to try to really push and have people really understand what really all has to go into these kind of tournaments. They are definitely a high level tournament. Now, your normal qualifiers you go to, maybe it's 5, 6 rounds, maybe it's even 8 rounds in your area, but it's still, you get in, you play pretty quick, you get out. This one we also did have sealed, that did happen in a portion of the day. I will talk about that. That did add a little bit of time and add a little bit of other stuff to it, so that did make things a little more extended, but the tournament was designed for those who qualified, right? The best way to say is, I don't want to say it was everyone there was supposed to know what they were doing, but everyone there qualified in their event because they were great players. That was the one difference with this event that I don't think a lot of people were ready for, is it wasn't just 2 people playing a game, it was 2 great players playing a game. Both the decks were built very specifically. It was people who were really good at it. It was people who were really pushing those time limits to make sure they maximize their turns. There was a lot more that went there because everyone was playing at a high level of gaming. It was a little different than, oh, my opponent made a misplay, great, clean up on it. It didn't get a lot of that. if you were playing against someone, they were a good player, and if you made a misplay, it could cost you the game, or it could just take an extra couple turns for you to try to claw your way back. There was a lot of back and forth in a lot of those matchups, so it was really awesome to see this really high-level gaming. Every table that I walked by, I was like, man, that's a cool deck. Man, that's a cool deck. Oh, those guys are going to time. Everybody was around at every table at the end of times because they were all really good games. Now, the next thing to talk about is kind of, again, those expectations, right? There wasn't a lot of food around, if any food around. The bathrooms were pretty close, but you did still have to have time to go to the bathroom. It's something that if you're a veteran card player and you've been to big events, you kind of know how it is. You pack a sandwich, you pack your granola bars, you try to eat a big breakfast. That is your preparation, and the rest of it is just kind of survival mode. And that's really how it's always going to be. Even at the next event, it'll probably be that way. It wasn't Wizards' intentions to do it this way. However, it's how PAX wanted it. Wizards can't go, oh, I want a food truck set up so people can just go over there and eat at all times. It's not how it's done. They get to get a booth, they get to get an area, a play section, and this is the space that they get. And then PAX goes, we do have a food court. It's located over here. You just have to go to it. You had to finish your match early to be able to try to get up there and go eat and come back. You had to try to finish your match on time to go to the bathroom and come back. Things like that I can understand are difficult, but it really is the way of the world when it comes to these big events and these card games. However, like I said, I do think if we would have broken up the event into 2 different days, I think that would have mitigated a lot of that stuff. It would have been pretty easy for maybe people to sit down for 5 or 6 hours and play without food and kind of try to do those things, and then be able to go out to dinner and do normal stuff, and then the next day finish out the event. So maybe that's just the route we kind of take in the future with it. We definitely want to try to voice our opinions. However, I'll tell you to try to voice them correctly. I don't ever think that there is a wrong opinion. I do think there's a wrong way to project your opinion. So I've seen lots of good things on the internet about the event, but I've also seen a lot of bad stuff. So I would definitely think that Wizards would love to hear your opinion. Just try to give it in a better light and try to give it as constructive criticism. Find a better way to say something, but just slamming on the event and slamming on the idea of it isn't going to help anyone really, and it also kind of makes us look bad as a community. Wizards is doing quite a bit for us for these events, and so it's our job to kind of give them the correct feedback so next year we can do all these things and have them be even better. Now let's talk about how my day went. So round 1 was constructed. I ended up going up against someone who was running a 5-wide. It was the 4 Airstrike Patrol characters and then Scrapnel as the 5th character, running a very, very aggressive orange deck, and that thing could put out a lot of damage, let me tell you what. It was really, really crazy. One thing that was really interesting to see was which different patrol characters and lords were going to get out there, and the Airstrike Patrols were by far the #1 team that I saw as far as the Battle Patrols, Rescue Patrols, all those good ones. Airstrike Patrol getting out there doing a lot of damage. The really cool part is cards like Enforcement Batons have an orange battle icon and a green battle icon. Well, normally the green's like, cool, I can fish it. Well, the green battle icon becomes an orange in the deck. So then now you're being able to attack and get even more damage out of those pipped cards. So it was really crazy to see how much damage that deck could put out. Again, I was running Shockwave, and I managed to hit his hand pretty early, and he wasn't really able to stabilize in time, and I was able to take that match 2-0. Really, really good stuff, though. Round 2, I ended up going up against a 3-wide. It was a Battlefield Legend, Nightbird, Fireflight, right? The brave one, yeah. Fireflight. I did end up taking game 1, and then game 2, he ended up sideboarding Nightbird out for, I don't even remember. Ended up bringing out Nightbird, bringing in somebody else, and it was a really close game. He was running swap missions, so it was allowed him to tap down his other character and untap Battlefield Legend, and I think I ended up losing by a few points of health. It was really, really close. And then game 3, I didn't see any upgrades, and if you ever want to know how to beat Shockwave, don't let him get their upgrades. And I every single time on defense would look at the top of my deck and see an upgrade, and then every single time on my turn I'd look at the top of the deck, and it was never a card I could play. It was always a card I would draw. I think I ended up like seeing Leap into Battle like 12 times throughout the match, even trying to like scrap it, draw him. It was pretty bad. I unfortunately didn't get any upgrades, so I did take a loss in game 3 there. Now getting into the sealed portion and kind of talking about sealed a little bit before my matchup specifically, is that a lot of people are talking about sealed and really if it belongs at a high competitive level, and I honestly can't really tell you how I feel about it. I do like it. I do dislike it. The best way for me to say it without trying to pick a side is that I do believe that sealed was fair for the event. If you boil down sealed to its raw form, to its raw question of, is it competitive? I think the answer is yes. I do think that there are cards that you have to make a decision if they are good enough to be put into your deck. Yeah, I think you do have to make a decision when it comes to building, is if this card's going to help. And then I do think that there is skill as far as playing. You can easily play a card, make a bad play, and your opponent can play a card and make a good play. I don't think that every player is equal when it comes to sealed. You sit down, go, this is my set of cards, this is your set of cards, let's see how it goes. I do think that there are decisions as far as your sequencing goes. I do think there are decisions as far as what cards you play goes. There is a competitive aspect to the game. Now, the other part of the conversation and the other part of the argument is that your pool is RNG. It is random. You have zero control over it. So yes, you can build a deck out of anything you're given. The power level of those decks will swing in power level. And you are correct. They will. However, I do think that this event proved that it was fair. And by that I mean some people got really good sealed pulls and some people got really bad sealed pulls. And then there were people in the middle like myself who got a deck that you could do stuff with, but you could also lose with. Now I know of a few people who got like Ion Storm, Trigger Happy, and Laserbeak, and that's a really good deck. I also saw someone else, and both of these people did hit top 8. Someone else who got Springer, Fire Drive, and I don't even remember the third character, but like it was a constructed deck. And it makes those sealed matches a lot easier for someone to win, and yes, it does help them in their brackets on their way to top 8, whereas I know that there were people who went undefeated in constructed, went 6-0, but lost all 3 of their sealed matches, so they missed top 8. So I can understand both ends of the argument, and I don't really think there's a right or wrong side, to be honest with you. Obviously, those who went 3-0 with sealed are going to be like, I thought sealed was fine, and then obviously those ones who went 0-3 in sealed are going to say sealed really sucked. It is a crapshoot. It does change things quite a bit. The one thing that I didn't like about sealed with the event was the mental taxing that it did. I don't even know if that's really the best word to put it, but we had to start round 1 and round 2 playing our constructed decks. You have to mentally prepare for that. You sit down, you play a deck, you have to mentally beat that player, you have to sideboard, you have to hope you win your first 2 matches because rounds 3, 4, and 5 are sealed and they're kind of randomized. And you really need to go into sealed with a positive record. If you've lost your first 2 rounds, sealed became a lot more stressful. But what happened was after that, we had to separate, go back into different seats. We had to sit down, and for a lot of people, they don't know how to register sealed. Again, I came from a Magic background. I remember back in the day when you'd get a box, you'd have to open the box, write down all the cards in it, you'd have to close the box, put the paper within it, and then they'd go, okay, pass it across from you, pass it to the left, pass it to the right, pass it across from you, pass it to the left, and you would never see that box again, no matter what was in it. You could open it and been like, oh, these cards are amazing. They were going to somebody else. With this, you had to have your opponent across from you register your deck, and you had to register their deck, and it was to make sure that 2 people happened to see those cards to make sure that those cards were there and those cards were correct. Now, this process is what made things take a little bit longer. After you've mentally sat down to play this game, you've played a couple of rounds, whether you're in a good spot and you're 2-0, whether in your bad spot you're 0-2, you kind of mentally started to settle in. And then you had to stop for like 45 minutes to learn how to register and register these decks. And then you got like another half hour to 45 minutes to build your deck out of what you had. You were kind of rushed into building with what this limited resources looked like. There was also a few things as far as not being able to talk and stuff, which I can understand. They don't want to make sure that nothing is going on. It's still a competitive event, so it's just like drafting and a few of the other things. You were kind of asked to be a little quiet and just try to get this process done. But you end up having to mentally lose momentum, I think is the best way to say it. And then after that, it was boom, pairings are up. You're in for round 3, you're in for round 4, in for round 5. And then however you were at, you had to mentally separate yourself again from that deck, from how your matches went, and go back into construct it. So that was a pretty tough thing, I will admit, to do. Something I've never been tasked with doing before. Usually in previous tournaments, it was like day 1 is sealed, day 2's constructed, or day 1's constructed, day 2 becomes sealed or draft. So it was usually separated by a day, so I didn't have to like go back and forth in it. It seems really strange, but it definitely was really awkward to have to deal with. I think a better way to have done this would have been with day 1, before we started, to probably sit down during the player meeting and register your decks then, and then turn everything into wizards. It could have easily been fold the paper up, put it with the deck list, rubber band it. It goes with judges. Judges put it in a sealed place so they're protected. You can't really mess with any of this stuff. And then the next, or whenever we start those portions, round 3, after which you sit down across from your paired opponent and they come by and just drop your deck box off. You kind of just shuffle up and you're ready to play from there, and you don't have to mentally stop. You get to just kind of just start to ride the wave all the way through the event. Just so it would also probably save a lot of time. Like I said, it ended up feeling like we took quite a bit of time to do that sealed portion. But that's really all my thoughts as far as on sealed goes. I don't know if it doesn't help at all, because I didn't pick a side. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I thought it was very fair, and I thought that it did change up the brackets enough, which is what it was designed to do, was really keep people in certain brackets, right? If you were doing good in constructed, you went into sealed and did really good. You were on that rise to top 8. Whereas if you were on the bottom, you lost your first 2 matches, you maybe won your first 3 sealed matches, it kind of puts you back in that chance to now win the rest of your constructed matches and kind of ride that to top 8. So it really allowed this fluctuation, or unfortunately for those who were 2-0, lost all 3, and then won all your other ones, those 3 matches ended up weighing you down a lot. So like I said, I can understand the argument both ways. I don't think that it was bad that it was there. I don't think that it was great that it was there. Now, talking about my matches when it came to sealed, round 3, my sealed pool was pretty mediocre. I ended up getting Trigger Happy, Deadlock, and Red Alert, which was a really interesting team. Trigger Happy was really nice because I was able to have that Pierce on hand. I know there's a lot of black pips in the 2 waves, so I kind of try to ride a little bit more of that Pierce side of things. Deadlock was also a mercenary, and he had the cool ability to have stealth from Autobots and Decepticons, so I thought I could probably force my opponents into other attacks, and he did have a base of 5 attacks, so I could try to push a little bit extra damage with him. And then I did end up getting a Laser Cutlass. The only character it can go on was Red Alert, but it was a rare, and I could pick it up with Trigger Happy, so I figured that would come and play in sometimes. And then I did have EM24 launcher, I think that's what it is, blank pit for 3 attack. Again, I could pick it up off of Trigger Happy. And to be honest with you, I did also have 1 opportune repairs, so I got to use that on Red Alert, and I did have 1 opportune offensive, so I got to use that on Trigger Happy. 1 of each, thought that was really cool. Had those both in there, both black battle icons. But that was really the extent of my deck. I didn't really have anything else fancy with that. But with the end of game rules, I ended up winning the first match, which had a lot of controversial stuff behind it. If my opponent is watching, I feel bad that that's kind of how it ended. I don't really want to go into a lot of depth with it for you guys, just because I don't think that it's necessary, and I also don't really want to give details to it. I did end up winning on health. That is all I'll leave it at. And then the second round was the same thing. I ended up going to game 3. I ended up winning with health as well. Being able to get in for 5 Pierce 5 with Trigger Happy pretty consistently made that deck win, or being able to get the laser cutlass onto red alert and attack, and for 4 Pierce 4 on a regular basis. That was the only reasons why I won. It definitely wasn't I was dealing enough damage to like crush my opponents, or I was blocking for enough. I just won a Pierce race, and I was able to pierce down my opponents faster than they were able to beat me. It was leaned a little bit heavier into blue, so I tried to hang on for as long as I could and try to just pierce as much as I could. But I didn't have any calculated strikes. I didn't really have designated targets. I got really lucky with just being able to get some big pierce attacks. And then match 3, match 5, I guess technically the third match in sealed. I did win the previous one, I don't know if I said that. This one, again, I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail about. I really try to shy away from negative thoughts. A lot of people look at it as you're kind of using it as excuses. A lot of people also blame it on the rulings. On this one, I would like to say that we should have went to game 3. We spent a lot of time in game 1, and we went to time at the end of game 2. Now, with board state, I would have won on health, and we should have done that. We should have went to game 3 with the end of game rules. We should have played 1 round of going through all of our characters until they are tapped, and then checking health for game 3. However, because we ran out of time in game 2, the judge did rule that because my opponent already won game 1, we were in game 2, it was just easier to give my opponent the win. Now, I definitely had a problem with this, obviously, just because we should have finished it out as talked about with the end of game rules. That's one of the weird parts about the end of game rules, which I will talk about in the meta video, the coverage video that I'll do next, talking about all those end of game things. But we should have definitely have gone to a game 3 and seen how things went. Now, I don't know how game 3 would have went. I'm not saying I would have won game 3. I totally might have lost game 3, but we should have figured that out. That is the one thing about taking away the intentional draws. You have now unintentional draws. You have to finish the match. I was kind of told you're taking the loss here, and it's going to be a 2-0, which I was not a fan of. I do believe, or maybe they just gave him 1 win, and that was the end of the match. However, it kind of messed me up a little bit, obviously, in my brackets with my win percentage, because I should have at least taken game 2, and then if I would have lost the match, then that would have been it, whatever. But so that ended up being round 3, and then we jumped back into constructed. So now we're going into, it's round 6. Round 6, I did go up against an Octone deck. Now, it was probably one of my worst matchups throughout the entire weekend, would have been an Octone match. It was one of the reasons why I was kind of teetering, going back and forth playing Shockwave and playing Octone, was because I knew there'd be a lot of Octones there. And Octone is definitely a very tough matchup for Shockwave, at least the Pierce build that we did. This opponent that I did play was also on the Pierce version. I ended up taking game 1 pretty soundly. Game 2, he ended up beating me more than enough Pierce to get in. Like, there was even one turn where I had Pierce 8 on one of my characters. I had a Bigger They Are on top of the deck with sights about ready to attack, and then I had a Bigger They Are in hand. I played Field Communicator to play the one on top, and then I played the one on my hand. I hit Octone for Pierce 8, which was really, really awesome. Still wasn't enough to get the job done in game 2. And then game 3 was ridiculously close. I thought my opponent had it, but I was able just to kind of maneuver around the board state a little bit and take it in game 3. And then going up in round 7, pretty think it was round 7. Yeah, it was round 7. Ended up going up against a friend, Travis, if you're watching this. Good matches, but we worked on his deck a little bit the night before, and we talked about some of the matches with Shockwave, and he ended up changing a few of the cards around. And, of course, we got paired in that round, and he beat me 2-0 pretty soundly, like I said. Him specifically, that deck specifically, runs so much Pierce and is really designed to kind of walk around Shockwave. I didn't even see any upgrades, and even if I would have, to be honest, I don't think there was any way I was ever winning that match. That one was pretty much an auto loss. Got smacked around pretty good, 2-0, so again, good games, man. And then went into round 7? Round 8. Went into round 8. I think I ended up playing Cars in round 8. Yeah, I think it was Cars in round 8. Ended up winning that round, and then I think my record at this point was 5-3, and I needed to win the next one to hit possibly top 32. Now, going into the last round, this was my mistake, 100% my mistake, 1,000,000% my mistake, so I will take full responsibility for this one, but I gave my opponent the win. Now, He was running the Kevin Allen list from last year. He was playing the deck. He played it great. I game one threw it away. I believed at this point, because they did put up standings. However, I didn't get a chance to go look at standings. I believed I wasn't going to make top 32, so I didn't care about the match. Now, this is where that is my mistake 100%. You should always play, if you're in that bubble-ish area where you can possibly make it and you're not aware or you're not sure, always play to win. Now, at this point, some of the team members were having kind of a bad day. Some of them were having a good time, so I was spending a lot of time, really talking with them. And this person I was talking to watches some of the videos, so we were kind of chatting. I gave up in the last match. Now, again, it's because I was under the impression I was sitting around 50th place, maybe, 45th, so I wasn't pushing because I thought even with a win, I wasn't going to get there, and my opponent wanted to win. So, match one, I needed to attack his cliff jumper for, I think it was 12. I had Shockwave in bot mode, who has 7. I had a weapon on him, which was 9. And I did have a leap into battle in my hand, and I did not play it. And so I just attacked. He did clean me up on the next game. Thought that was fine. Second match round or whatever else, I brought in Gyro Blasters. Ended up winning via Gyro Blaster. It wasn't enough for him to... He didn't top deck anything to be able to see any stuff. One thing that was really cool in that match, which I thought was pretty interesting, is that usually when you're Shockwave going up against Cliff Jumper, you can't get rid of your opponent's hand because they just draw so many cards. But I was able to hit him with a security checkpoint, which hit every card in his hand except for one. I think it was like 8 upgrades. And then I flipped Shockwave for the turn, which made him scrap another one. So it was like one of the only times I've ever gotten that card deck down to 0 cards in hand. So I did think it was pretty interesting. Ended up taking that game, and then in game 3, I didn't see any upgrades whatsoever. So like I said, again, I wasn't pushing for it, and for that it was my fault. Now, gave him the win, or I'm sorry, he earned the win. He beat me, and ended up being, what was that, 5-4? Yeah, 5-4 for the tournament. But ended up finding out that I was sitting at like 30th when that match started. So had I won, I probably would have ended up, somewhere in that maybe 22 range, 23 range, which would have been in the money, but I personally gave up. I didn't bother checking the standings first. I know that my team was trying to get to me to tell me where I was at in standings, but we already sat down because the time restraints, like the standings would go up the same time that the pairings would go up, so you didn't have time to really go look at the standings because you had to go get to your table. This is one thing that I think I would change a little bit if I could, would be to have the standings go up as soon as and then allow a few minutes for pairings to go up, or have multiple standings at different sections so people can go look at those. They were only posted at one of the banners, so trying to have 100 people around one banner, it just didn't really work out too well. So again, that was my fault. I should have definitely been in top 32, but because of my misplays and stuff like that, I missed top 32. Now with that, we did have someone hit top 16, so congrats to Sean. He did run cars. He got top 16. We had Kevin, who was running an Octone deck. I think he just barely missed top 32. He had the same points as Sean, who hit top 16, but because of win ratios and all those other things, like, it's really strange. You look at the point system and like how many games you won 2-0 or lost 2-0, it really changes your positioning. I think he just barely missed top 32, which was really, really unfortunate. And then we had a few others that were 5-4. So ultimately, we did really well throughout the day. I will talk about the matchups and this coverage in the next video, where I'll break down kind of reasonings for some of those, the reasonings behind the sealed games and why they were important and all that stuff in another video. So we ended up doing really well. I think the decks that we brought to the event were really powerful. I think they were positioned very well for the event. The chips just fell a specific way, and sometimes there's just nothing you can really do about it. So at the end of that night, ended up going and hanging out with a bunch of people. And by a bunch of people, I think there was like 30 of us who were trying to go to this one specific restaurant. It was really funny. It was a burger joint. And I remember we walked in, and just watching the cooks' faces when we all walked in was just like, they were very shocked. Turns out, no one in the area, as far as restaurants go, were told that there was a convention in town. So like, even the McDonald's that was over there was like, the only thing people can have is a plain cheeseburger or a basic cheeseburger. They're like, we're not doing any customizings whatsoever. We're just going to make millions of these and you either eat here or you don't. So in that restaurant's defense, like, they just didn't have the capacity, the employees, the product to be able to feed that many people from the event. So a bunch of people ended up leaving. Me and Eric and a couple of others, Brad and stuff, ended up sitting back and eating there, kind of going home for the night. Now, Sunday, we woke up and ended up going to the event in the morning, and I was lucky enough to be a commentator for the top 8. Now, this is a huge dream of mine. This is one of my, if not my favorite part of the event, was being able to do this, because it literally is something that I want to do really bad, and that Wizards of the Coast was lucky enough to give me the opportunity to do it. So big shout out to you guys if you guys happen to watch this. I really, really enjoyed it. I really hope that anyone who did watch did enjoy it as well. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you guys head down in the comment section below and let me know how I did. I think I did a really good job. I tried my best. But it was really, really awesome being able to commentate in top 8, to be able to give insight for a lot of that kind of stuff, to be able to commentate at such a large event. I mean, it was the Energon Invitational, guys. Like, this was our world. This is what everything we've been working for the last month and a half, has been put for this event. And I honestly think that it was perfect. It really was. There were definitely hiccups along the way for people, but ultimately, I think that those who were in top 8 deserve to be in top 8. I do think that there were others who should have been in top 8 as well, but unfortunately, you can only have 8 in top 8. Obviously, I think those who were there worked very hard to get there. I think those who were there played extremely well. I think they had great decks, and I think everything just went really fantastic. I did get to commentate with Matt for the first quarterfinal match, and I believe for the first semifinal, and then I did get to commentate with Scott Landis from Vector Sigma for one of the other matches, and then I did get to take a break for one of them, and then I got to jump back into it with Matt for the finals, which was really, really awesome stuff. Like I said, I will go into all the coverage stuff in another video. Way too much to put into this one, but I'll be breaking down all those top 8 decks. We'll be breaking up match lists, a bunch of other stuff in that video, so make sure you guys definitely check it out for that. And after that night was over, we got to go out to a bar. I apologize, I don't know the name of the bar. And hang out with a fantastic group of people. Now, this was a bunch of people that we talked about throughout the event. We got to hang out with through the event. And just to go out and have a really relaxing dinner and just really shoot the shit with a bunch of people was really, really awesome. It was, I mean, it's really hard to say my favorite part of the event, because I just had so many different things that I really, really enjoyed. But this was really awesome to be able to go out with people and be on a more personal level. You know, you get to ask people what they do for a living, because most people that we know, we just know through Transformers. It's like, oh, that's, you know, blah, 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 who plays Transformers. He always brings Metroplex, or that guy's always trying Menasor out. You get to really sit down with these people and find out more about them. And we realize how much closer that we really are once you put gaming to the side a little bit. Transformers is amazing. But when you kind of find out what people do for a living, and you get to really, you know, how old are they? Where do they live? Oh, what are some of their interests? You start to build a friendship. And it's a friendship that is, I think it's really good. I think it's really needed. And it's one thing that this community has a really good grasp on. I will say that I played Magic for many, many years at a very, very competitive level, and I never made friends like that. You know, there were definitely people that you'd play test with, but you knew their names, you kind of knew how to play test, you knew where they lived, but you don't know what they did. You didn't really care to know. I played Hearthstone for a long time, getting to Legend every month, but you don't conversate with people other than through a couple of forums, maybe a few messages. But with this game, I'm able to sit down and actually meet people, or people come up to me and go, hey Jamie, I watched your video on this, or hey Jamie, I love your channel, or hey Jamie, thank you for what you do for the community. I get to meet you guys, and it's really, really amazing to be in the front of that, to be able to provide you guys with content. And it's because of you guys that I get to do these kind of things, and because of you guys that I get to go out to these kind of events, and I get to meet you guys, and I get to build these friendships and stuff, and I get to see people that I saw at Gen Con, and it was like, hey man, how you been? Or oh, what's up? And talk to people that I helped build decks for who won their invitationals, who get to go out here and they get to come out and go, man, you know what? I really appreciate you taking your time out. I get to do that kind of stuff for you guys, and it really is humbling for me to be able to do these kind of things. So I just wanted to give a huge shout out to you guys and a big thank you guys for allowing me the ability to be in this situation. Now, what I would say is that I'm going to try my best to find the videos of the top 8. I think that they're definitely worth a watch. The gameplay was really awesome. The commentary was really good. But they were really good, so I'm going to try my best to try to find them. If I do find them, I'm going to link them down in the description box below. However, if you guys can go back and find them, they were streamed on Twitch through past times. If you guys can find a link to those videos, put them down in the comment section below, and I will pin them to the top so other people can watch, because I definitely suggest, even without audio, I think they are really awesome games to go watch. We saw an overwhelming advantage deck. We saw Optimus Primeless. There was even at one point where there were 3 Optimus Primes on the table in the finals. So it was like pretty crazy. Like the wide range of decks that we did have there was really awesome. Again, I'll be breaking all this down in a separate video. One I think that you guys are going to really enjoy, where I can kind of dive deep into the deck list. I can dive into some of the matchups and talk a lot about that really good stuff, because the diversity of the meta was very big, and there's a lot of things that you guys didn't get to see if you did watch top 8. It was really easy watching top 8 kind of going, oh, well, the same stuff was in the finals that's always been around. There was a lot of different stuff there. There really was. So I'm going to break down a lot of that stuff for you guys so you guys can better understand a lot of those things that were going on. All in all, I had a fantastic trip. I would do it again. I will be doing it again as soon as we find out what's next for the game. Maybe it's Origins is next and we're going to follow the same pattern. Maybe there's going to be a standalone event. Maybe there's going to be something at TFCon. I have no idea. I do know that I'm going to be streaming for you guys on Friday night. Today's what? Wednesday the 11th. So you got Friday the 13th. Oh, there you go. We're going to have a Friday the 13th stream. We're going to be playing some really fun stuff. We're going to be able to chat with you guys. So if you guys can jump into it, it's going to be around 6 o'clock my time in Colorado. So I'll make sure I put out a post for you guys on Facebook and on the channel as well, so you guys kind of know where to go and what times to go. So if you guys want to come jump in and chat, ask me questions about packs, ask the team questions about packs. I'm going to be showing off some really fun decks for that event. I'm going to be doing deck profile videos again for the Shockwave and for the Octone deck, so you guys can kind of see how those things went down, or at least the deck breakdown on some of those things. I'm going to be doing the meta thing, and then I do have some cool behind-the-scenes stuff that I'll probably be showing you guys hopefully next Wednesday. I'm hoping everything goes down. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I really hope that you guys did enjoy this video, kind of post-packs, my opinion on a lot of the stuff. Again, if I could recommend the event or tell you to try to go to it or my thoughts on it, it was an amazing event. It really was. It was a fantastic tournament, and I can't wait for the next big event. For some reason, my outro ended up getting really like corrupted or whatever weird stuff, but I really hope that you guys did enjoy this video. Again, I'm going to try to get a videographer for the next time that we do get to do some of this stuff, so we can get a lot of vlogging going on, because I was a really good event and I wish I could share with you guys some more stuff. But make sure you guys are looking forward to those deck profile videos and that coverage video. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you guys do subscribe so you guys can get access to those videos as soon as they become available. I'll catch you guys in the next one.